Hi all, Mario-Francisco Robles, MFR here with you, and this is the official Fanboy review for Wonder Woman. Now, this is probably going to be one of my shorter video reviews, not because I couldn't speak about this movie for hours, or not because I'm in a rush or anything, but because what I have to say is pretty much straightforward. First things first, this movie was phenomenal. It's easily the best in the DC extended universe thus far. And any long-time listeners, readers, followers, you guys know that I've been particularly critical of the DC films thus far. Not because I've anything against them, quite the contrary, but because they're my first love, and these characters mean a crap ton to me, so I just tend to be naturally harder on them than I would your average Marvel movie, which I didn't grow up on Marvel. Just these movies mean a lot to me. These characters mean a lot to me, and up to this point, I've been, in a word, disappointed with what I've seen so far. I don't recognize some of the characters in this universe as the ones that I grew up loving. But with Wonder Woman, this is easily the first time in these 4 films so far where I walked away feeling completely satisfied, completely uplifted, and completely just sort of in awe of what I just watched and what I just experienced, which is really kind of what we all go to the movies for, right? By the way, just kind of neat little tangent. Last night was very cool. So I'm at this screening in Manhattan, this advanced screening, and I noticed that they seem to be stalling. And I'm like, the movie's supposed to start at 7. Why haven't we started yet? They have this guy up front, doing silly games just to sort of kill time. He's giving out Wonder Woman tiaras. And he's like, all right, raise your hand if you want to tell us who the Wonder Woman in your life is and why. And it just seems very kind of I've been to a million of these screenings and I've never seen anything like that. So I started thinking something must be up. Either the projector is broken, or there's a reason that they are, stalling right now. And then all of a sudden, this woman comes up with a mic and says, "Folks, we have a special surprise for you. Some people want to say hi." And I'm like, "What?" At this point, I actually turned to over to Scully, who was with me last night, and I'm like, "Watch, Gal Gadot's here." And I said it like a joke, but it wasn't a joke. All of a sudden, she introduces Patty Jenkins, the film's director, Gal Gadot, Chris Pine, Robin Wright, and producer Charles Roven, and they all just come walking down the aisle, and it just rocked me. It took me for a loop. It was very cool. They took some time to say something into the mic, a couple of jokes, and just to kind of thank us for all being there, and I just kind of hitting the point home how monumental it was that here we are at the first Wonder Woman movie ever. So that was pretty cool. I just kind of wanted to mention that. That was kudos to Warner Brothers for that nice little surprise. And thank you guys for dropping by. But anyway, all right. So with the movie itself. So like I said, what I have to say is fairly straightforward. I'd rather spend this time with you discussing some of the film's ideas that really spoke to me. But just real quick, with regard to the film itself, I thought it was really well made, well written, well scripted, well directed, well paced, well edited. I thought it looked beautiful. I think the cast is phenomenal. Gal Gadot, I know a lot of people were skeptical about her. They didn't think she looked enough like how they envisioned the character to look in the comics. But truthfully, I never felt that way. I was always ready to give her a chance. And for me, that willingness to give her a chance paid off right off the bat in Batman v Superman. I don't know if you guys saw my review for that one, but it's on here as well if you want to check it out. I liked her in that movie. I thought she brought an interesting, mysterious element to the plot, and I actually her cat and mouse stuff with Bruce Wayne was some of the cooler stuff for me in that movie. So anyway, I thought she was great, and she actually exceeded my expectations with this movie. She's got a sort of magnetism and a charisma to her. The camera loves her. And you just kind of get the sense that there's this mystique, there's this aura to her. She's a star. She's a star. And this movie is going to cement that. And what really kind of surprised me was the overall the supporting cast was everyone just brought their A game. It's pretty wild. In particular, I want to single out Chris Pine, who I wasn't expecting that much from. I like Chris Pine. I do. I love the Star Trek movies. I like the first one. I love the first one, and I really enjoyed the third one. The middle one, not so much. But Chris Pine, I like him. But in this movie, I have a whole new respect for him now. He really brings such a nuanced performance. He makes Steve Trevor, who could be a very paint by numbers, one-dimensional, how you doing sort of, guy. And he makes him a very interesting, fully fleshed out character. And sometimes it isn't even what's in the script. Sometimes it's just like the camera will linger on his face, and you could practically hear his thoughts, these little subtle, quivers of the lip and a glimmer in the eye, and you realize, he has this very in-depth internal life that really makes Steve Trevor a fairly fascinating character. I wouldn't mind seeing like the Adventures of Steve Trevor movie. And overall, Robin Wright was in there, and like she's not even in the movie for all that long, and that's not a spoiler. She's in the first act, the Themyscira sequence, and she's not in there for long, but she really makes her presence felt. And that's how I feel about a lot of this movie. Like if you pay attention in retrospect after you see it, there are certain characters who barely have much of any screen time, but they still all serve the story beautifully. And to me, that's a testament to really good filmmaking. That Patty Jenkins was really economical with her choices, and she knew how to get the most bang out of her buck with all of these characters, with the way they were written, with the way she paced the movie. She didn't wait. There's no fat on it. Everyone in there, they do what they're supposed to do, and then you move on to the next thing. And the whole movie just brims with this like excitement, this lightness, this optimism. That for me, it really spoke to me. It really felt like a timeless sort of adventure story. A battle of good versus evil. We follow our hero who is not angst-ridden, who is not ethically challenged or going through some sort of complex internal quest to find themselves. Diana knows who she is. She knows what is right, what is wrong. She knows when to take action, and she knows when not to. And like the bad guys are bad, the good guys are good, and it just feels like a classic hero story. So many of these movies nowadays, like if you feel like they're trying to reinvent the wheel or deconstruct heroism or ask these deep questions that let's look at this a different way than we've ever looked at it before. And it's like, it's not, you don't have to do that with all these movies, especially with someone as pure as Wonder Woman, with someone as important as Wonder Woman, arguably the most well-known female superhero ever, and an iconic figure around the world. You don't want to overthink it, and you don't want to saddle the story with too much convoluted crap. And thankfully, they don't do that at all. The script is really just like, it's very sort of straightforward. We follow her from Themyscira. We follow her into London, where Steve Trevor sort of introduces her to the real world. Then we follow her into the battlefront, and then we get that brings us towards the conclusion where we face our ultimate evil. There's not a lot of like little twists and turns and overwrought, overly thought out twists in this movie, and that actually helps some of the bigger things that happen towards the end really land, because since a lot of the story is fairly straightforward and the allegiances are pretty clear, when there are like these two surprising moments towards the end, you really feel them, because there wasn't any of that for the first 2 hours. So I just think it's a really well-made film, and just a couple of things I want to discuss is just the themes of the movie for me are beautiful. The film is sort of an exploration of human nature. It asks the question of, what kind of person are you? We all have light and dark in us. And the question of, what do you do when you see something bad happening? You can either do nothing or you can do something. And what kind of person are you? And oftentimes that's what distinguishes between good and bad, because really we can all go either way. And in this movie, you see different varying degrees of people coming to that fork in the road and deciding, I have to take action. I can't sit idly by while this is happening. And obviously Diana is like the ultimate champion of that in this movie. She doesn't have it in her to stand idly by. She has to, at all costs, even if it means breaking her mother's heart, even if it means abandoning the only home she's ever known, Diana has to get involved in this war and put an end to it, or innocent people will die. And that's beautiful. And then, Steve Trevor is a more complex character in terms of he sees the good, he sees the bad, he recognizes that both are in him, but he makes the choice to go towards the light. Even if he has to do some shady things to get there, he knows he's always going towards the light. And you see how he's inspired by Diana. Like, their love story isn't just like, I think you're hot, let's make out. He sees her as something worth aspiring for. He sees her as a sort of almost like role model, aside from someone that he's interested in. So I found that very interesting, the whole idea of the film sort of boiling down to this idea that, mankind is both. We are the best thing that's ever happened, and we're the worst thing that's ever happened to this world. And it's all about what you believe, and it's all about what you do in times of danger and peril and darkness that really defines you. And in that way, the film overall, one of the messages too is like, it's sort of like a call to activism. It seems to want to inspire you to not sit idly by. It wants you to feel like, you know what, this is messed up what's going on. I have to take a stand. And if you look at where we are right now in 2017, with activism being at an all-time high and people feeling like they see wrong things happening and that they can't sit idly by, this movie is like perfect for this moment. It's a perfect sort of storm right now for this movie to come out, because it really does seem to be a call to activism. It's a call to end all wars. It's a call to say that love and compassion are the real answer, are the real way to peace. It even breaks it down towards the end there, where, similar to another movie I reviewed a few months ago, the Kong Skull Island, this idea that when you strip soldiers of their flags and of their uniforms and you just have them there side by side, they're indistinguishable from one another. The good, the bad, the us, the them, because we're all just one. And the movie really sort of, it hits that point home that war is the most vile, cruel creation that mankind has ever come up with. And that you really have to question, who is it that's pushing us towards war? Who really benefits from war? And maybe you have to get up and take a stand against it. I love that. I really did love that quite a bit. Something I loved that sort of surprised me was, well, I don't know if you can notice, if you can tell, but I'm not a woman. I'm a man. And I wasn't thinking that the whole sort of feminist moment of all of this was going to really factor into my viewing of this movie. I thought, all right, this will be something sort of cool to witness, but, it's not going to hit home in a personal way for me, But I'm very surprised to report that, sitting there in the theater and watching Wonder Woman be wonderful, I was sort of taken aback by like a sort of like a rush of emotions of seeing a female superhero doing amazing things and fighting crime and doing what's right, and hearing women around me in the theater like erupting with applause and whooping and hollering and getting all into it. And it sort of just struck me. I'm like, wow, this really is like a seminal sort of moment. This is a cultural moment right now that we are experiencing. And, it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. I started thinking about my daughter. My daughter Talia is 6, and I realized like, wow, my little girl's going to have this amazing heroine to watch and want to emulate and be inspired by, the way I did growing up on Superman. And realizing that she would have this and she would be able to feel ownership of it, really just sort of, it's this is a special movie. The way Gal Gadot plays her, she is a very inspirational figure and a very aspirational figure, in that you would hope that all of us, regardless of our gender really, would want to be like her, because she just knows what to do and when to do it and right from wrong. And even if she's a little naive at times about how black and white things are and how simply things can be fixed, you never doubt for a second that she just wants what's right, and that she wants to see innocent people happy and surviving and thriving and not being under the thumb of nefarious forces that are out to take advantage of them or harm them or kill them or deprive them of their life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So I just got to say that, you know, for the current times in which we are living, this is a beautiful movie at just the right time. So with that said, you know, Patty Jenkins, my hat's off to you. You made a wonderful superhero movie that I think is going to stand the test of time. To the wonderful cast, unbelievable work across the board. I really felt like this movie, like a director I've always sort of complimented when it comes to this sort of stuff, is Steven Spielberg. I feel like if you go look at any of his movies, you look from Jaws to Minority Report, whatever the case, he knows how to get the most out of every character that appears on screen. Even if you're a bit player, even if you have 2 or 3 lines, for those 2 or 3 lines, you're going to be given the opportunity to leave your mark. And he usually casts accordingly. He gets really talented people to play these minute little roles that are in there for a scene or two. And I feel like Patty Jenkins has done that here too, and that this cast really rose to the occasion in that sense, where everyone on that screen brims with an interesting multi-dimensional internal life that really sort of helps the whole thing come to life. So the cast is phenomenal. I guess if I have one qualm, and this is like nothing really, there are a couple times where the CG is a little wonky. I will say that. There are a couple of times where the effects are a little bit jarring, a little bit unpolished looking, where you're like, ooh, that looked surprisingly fake for a big budget Warner Brothers superhero movie. But really, aside from that, that's just nitpicking. Aside from that, my official review for this movie is an A-. I'm giving Wonder Woman an A-, which is damn near a perfect score. Only thing that doesn't give it like an A+ or a flat A is the fact that, you know, there's a couple of moments in there I didn't mention that feel a little bit like heavy-handed melodrama that sort of pulled me out of it a little bit, but like thankfully those things are mercifully short, those little detours. And also, you know, like I said, there are a couple times where the effects are a little bit like, this looks a little fake. But A- is a pretty damn good score, so don't hold that against me. Yeah, Wonder Woman's pretty great. I think you can have a great time. Go check it out. And lastly, if you enjoyed this review, you can see my fully written review, which goes into a little more detail on the film itself. You can go to splashreport.com for that. I've also got an editorial about Wonder Woman and the timing at which it's coming out and how it's kind of like the perfect movie for the moment that we're all living in. That's going to be published over on IGN. And also, I'm going to be discussing this more at length on the Fanboy podcast. There's going to be a Fanboy Friday edition of the podcast this week, so you can expect that up tomorrow. The Fanboy podcast is available on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, TuneIn, Overcast, basically anywhere where you get your podcasts, you can subscribe to the Fanboy podcast. So if you're into that sort of thing, subscribe to that, subscribe to this YouTube channel. There's plenty more on the way. Thank you, and until next time, adios.